Hi friends and welcome back. My name is Lee Provost. You also might know me as Osirus. You're here on Osirus Studios and we are here today to get back in with another episode of our Pokémon VGC How to Play guide. We're going into the Moon series, and our last episode, which you can check out up here, we looked at Kyogre, and what better way to kind of follow on from that than to look at its cousin from that franchise series in Ruby and Sapphire than looking at Groudon. So today's guide is all going to be about Groudon, the introduction of the Z crystals. We're going to look at some common sets that we saw played in the Sun series and what their transition is into the Moon series, because the threats are very similar, but we're going to look at playing Groudon slightly differently. It's got a few more options now going into the Moon series, so that's what we're going to concentrate on today. Before we get into anything though guys, I will just ask, please smash that like button. Make sure you do hit the subscribe button as well with that notification bell so you don't miss any content coming out, especially if you're into your VGC stuff like that, because we'll have plenty of that coming up on the channel as we go into this Moon series. And without further ado, let's just get into it. So I hope you enjoyed today's guide. Remember to leave your comments down below after the episode, and I hope you enjoy it. So here we go. Right, there's the thumbnail. You can see Pokemon Moon Series VGC 2019 guide, how to play Groudon. So this is going to be a brief overview, but before we get into any sets or anything like that, I think the first thing to do is just take a quick overview of Groudon for the newer players out there, and just a refresher for all of you other guys as well. So Groudon is a ground type. It has the ability Drought. Drought brings the sun to the field for 5 turns, so it's a bit like that drizzle ability on the Kyogre. Instead of the rain, it brings the sun. Now you can disrupt that again with things like airlock, things like Cloud 9 abilities, and opposing weather, things like drizzle. If you switch it in when Drought is active, when the sun's on the field, it will overwrite that. The same goes for if you bring in hail or sand. Common attacks you're going to see on Groudon. Big one is going to be Precipice Blades. Double target attack. It has 85% accuracy, which is a bit unreliable at times. Other options on there are going to be Fire Punch, always going to see taking advantage of the sun. You're going to have Rock Slide as an option to hit flying types, things like Ho-Oh, Salamence, Crobat, other things in the format, Yveltal that are popular, and then Stomping Tantrum, which is a single target ground attack that gets around Wide Guard and other options that sometimes may block Precipice Blades. You're going to look at the base stat totals. You've got 100 HP, 150 attack, 140 defense, 100 special attack, 90 special defense, and 90 speed. Like we said in our Kyogre guide, that 90 speed is quite generic for these restricted Pokemon. Type, strengths, and weaknesses. You're going to see it's weak to water, grass and ice. It's got a nice immunity to electric, and it does have nice resists to both poison and rock, hit normally by everything else there. So basic overview, you can see from the base stat totals that 150 attack stat is phenomenal. It's amazing. You want to take advantage of that. The one thing that does hinder that a little bit in this format is how popular Intimidate is, and that will nerf Groudon's ability to hit as hard, but you can get around that. You can have support Pokemon to play around that. Defense stat as well, very good, and generally as a ground type it's not a bad Pokemon. Got a nice high base stat total of 670, so very good Pokemon, and one that I think will be used quite a lot going into the Moon series. One of the big things going into the Moon series was the introduction of Z crystals, and what better way to start us off in this guide today than looking at a Groundium Z set, so using that Tectonic Rage with the Groudon. Now early parts of the format you're seeing Groudon's being run very bulky, quite slow, making use of the defensive stats on it, and then not needing so much investment because Tectonic Rage coming off Precipice Blades, 190 base power attack with the stab on top is very powerful, meaning you don't need all of that attack investment, so you can put it elsewhere to make sure that it's surviving a lot better on the field. And common attacks aren't changing from what we've already covered, but Precipice Blades is going to be probably the main one that you want to go off when using that Groundium Z and the Tectonic Rage, because you've got the spread damage. If there's times where there's Wide Guard in front of you, then you might want to just revert and use that big nuke and take something out. We went for a careful nature because we want to take more special attacks, and we'll get to that in a moment, but EVs for this set in particular are 236 HP, 84 attack, 4 defense, 164 4 special defense and 20 speed. So you can look at some attacking calculations here. You've got that attack Tectonic Rage coming out against a 4 HP standard Kyogre as a guaranteed 1-hit kill, which is pretty huge. And you can see from the defensive calculations, if you've got the Sun up and you're out against the Kyogre and it does go for that Hydro Vortex, thinking I'm probably going to be able to pick up the knockout, which it does on most standard Groudons. This Groudon in particular takes a Hydro Vortex, it'll take it 100% of the time, and then you'll be able to return with that Tectonic Rage and pick up the knockout on the Kyogre. Trade off there, very nice. Common partners we're going to see with this sort of Groudon or Tapu Koko for obvious reasons, helps against those water type attacks. You're going to have Incineroar, it's got Fake Out support, Intimidate support, supports the team in general, and then Venusaur is going to be its partner in crime, and I don't see that really changing going into the Moon series. With that Chlorophyll ability, whilst the Sun's up, its speed is doubled, and it deals with a lot of things, especially those water types that do threaten Groudon quite heavily. Common checks to Groudon are always going to be Kyogre. It does so well. If it gets the rain up and it's in front of Groudon, Groudon really doesn't stand much chance. You can't really survive these water attacks without a damage reduction berry. You've got Lunala as well with its Shadow Shield ability, and now its ability to use Z-moves is going to be very threatening. And then Yveltal, which is a part flying type, which will be able to avoid any of those ground type attacks coming out from Groudon. So there's a few examples there for you to get started. Next set we're going to look at is a very popular set that was used in the Sun series, and one that I think that players will still fall to and revert to going into the Moon series because it is very strong. I've gone with an Adamant Nature this time to make sure that we're getting as much out of that attack stat as possible. Effort values, EVs here are going to be 108 HP, and that is a number that makes sure that you're reducing the amount of recoil damage from the Life Orb, so that is very important for this set. You've got 52 attack, you've got 12 defense, 236 special defense and 100 speed. So the speed stat here allows you to get the jump on modest max speed Ludicolo in Sun. So if you got the Sun up and you're in front of Ludicolo, you can always guarantee that you'll be outspeeding it going into that next turn, as long as the Sun is up and the rain isn't up. Attacking calculation example that we've got here is a 52 attack plus Adamant Life Orb Groudon Fire Punch into a Venusaur with the Sun up is way more than you need to make sure that you are picking up the knockout there. So even heavily invested defensive Venusaur, if you ever see them, they're going to be knocked out. And the defensive calcs here, 252 special attack Venusaur Grass Knot versus this Groudon is always going to be pretty much, you're going to survive this. It's got a 6.3% chance to knock out, so you've got a good chance to take that. It's a nice mix. You've got some nice speed there, you've got very good defensive stats, and you're taking advantage of that attacking stat as well with the Life Orb boost on top of that. Common partners for this Groudon, you're going to see things like Crobat, Ho-Oh, and I think with the introduction of the Moon series, I think one of the Pokemon that does become a lot more relevant is Salamence. It gets access to its Z-move now with Intimidate. It's immune to Groudon. It's a great switch into Groudon, and it has access to Speed Control and Tailwind as well. I do see this Pokemon in particular becoming a very good partner for Groudon. Common checks are always going to be things like Cortana. It's faster than Groudon. It can hit it for super effective damage with those Leaf Blades. Xerneas as well, if it gets boosted up, it's going to be faster. It's going to be hitting ridiculous damage with those Moon Blasts. And Tapu Lele as well with the Psychic Terrain in Psychic, and the Shattered Psyche as an option as well, are things that can really hurt Groudon. And one of the things that we looked at in the past slide was Venusaur is a good partner with Groudon. Does so well against 2 of these Pokemon here, and maybe even 3 if it's carrying Hidden Power Fire for that Cortana in particular, but Sludge Bomb for the other 2 for obvious reasons. So the next set we're going to look at is a 50% berry set. This is going to be generally a bit more of a bulky Groudon because you're with that berry and that extra health that you'll be getting back. You want to make sure that it's taking those hits, so when that berry procs, it's in a really good position to move on and start disrupting your opponent's team, throwing out those big attacks. You're going to have support and things like Palkia, things like Bronzong, things like Tapu Fini. Tapu Fini in particular with the Misty Terrain and Swagger combination really pairs nicely with this sort of Groudon because you're lacking a lot in the attacking area of Groudon's ability because you're bulking it out a lot more to take advantage of that berry. So having something like Swagger with the Misty Terrain really does complement this type of Groudon quite well. You're going to have things like Bronzong with Trick Room, with Gravity to support the Precipice Blade's accuracy. Things like Palkia can support that sort of mode as well. So an attacking option here is going to be +2 52 attack Groudon Precipice Blades into a Kyogre has a 50% chance to one-hit KO, and one of the things that I would suggest is just tweaking that, maybe boost the attack a little bit more so you're guaranteeing the attack and maybe sacrificing a bit more of that special defense so you're not quite taking these big defensive cards at 100% and turn them into a lower percentage, if you get what I mean. So one of the defensive card examples here is a +2 252 special attack Fairy Aura Xerneas Moonblast into this particular Groudon. It's a 100% 2-hit kill. That will proc the 50% berry, get you back up to 50% at least, and then you can move on from there, set your Trick Room up, set your Swagger up and things like that. So one of the things that we will look at here is common partners, which we've already covered. They're going to be Trick Room Pokemon again, Palkia, Bronzong, Tapu Fini for good reasons that we've already mentioned. Common checks here are going to be things like a Abomasnow will disrupt the sun, it can threaten Groudon with those grass and ice type attacks, which it is weak to. Moongus is another thing that will threaten Groudon, especially if it's more of a Trick Room variant, and that's another thing why Tapu Fini is so important to help with that misty terrain and prevent those status conditions. And another Pokemon that I do really like as a check to Groudon is Araquanid with that bug typing along with its water typing. It does resist those ground type attacks, and it can throw out some big heavy damage with those water type attacks of its own, and Groudon isn't going to enjoy any time in front of Araquanid, and the only thing that it will rely on in those situations is Rock Slide or something like Stone Edge, which can hit it for super effective damage. So that is the 50% berry set, and the final example that we're going to look at in this guide is going to be the Choice Band set. So another common item used on Groudon, taking advantage of that 150 base attack stat that it has got. Again, you're going to see variations in moves here with things like Thunder Punch, things like Stone Edge, but something like Stomping Tantrum is going to be a lot more prevalent on this sort of set. You're going to see common partners with this sort of Groudon are going to be things like Talonflame, anything that we've already mentioned of course as well, Ludicolo, Cresselia, Ho-Oh, things with speed control that can really help support this Groudon, help it switch out, have good switch-ins for its big threats like Kyogre, like those grass types, like Venusaur, and things that can help support it a lot. So we've went for an Adamant Nature here, 28 speed IVs for a specific reason. So if you would like to utilize Trick Room and you're going up against another base 90 restricted Pokemon that's got no investment, you will always underspeed that by 1 point under Trick Room, and this still can work in Tailwind as well. So a very unique speed stat for that reason, so you can work under Trick Room and you can work in Tailwind as well. Effort values here, we've got 252 HP, 100 attack and 156 special defense. Attacking calculation example that we've got here is a Precipice Blades versus a Dialga. It's a clean one-hit KO, easy with that Choice Band. And then defensive calc here is you're always going to take a Grass Knot from a Venusaur. It's one of the things that really does threaten Groudon quite heavily. Common checks are always going to be things that we've already mentioned, but other things that you've got to be aware of. Tapu Fini with the Hydro Vortex now that it's got access to in the Moon series. Kyurem White as well with access to that Z move, and Rayquaza, because it is a flying type, it is going to be immune to those ground type attacks, and if you are choice locked through the Choice Band, you can easily just scout out what it's locked into and then switch something like this into it. So you need to be aware of these Pokemon and support Groudon in particular with how to deal with these specific threats. But there we go, there is the Choice Band set, and we're just going to take a quick look at the counter options and just an overall summary of Groudon. One of the things that I want to do throughout these guides is make sure that you are aware of these certain Pokemon's abilities with their speed stats. So the speed benchmarks, you know, Groudon is base 90, so its max speed that it can hit without a boosting item is 156. It's never going to be faster than that, as I say, without a boosting item. Minimum speed is never going to be lower than 85 at level 50, which you cannot get past anywhere within this format now. And then a common speed stat that I'd say people are running is 123, so that's a generic one. From my view of the early Moon series, players are tending to run Groudons a lot slower though, so this may change as the format progresses, but at the minute I would say that's generally a good speed stat to kind of look at with Groudon. Items are obviously going to be the Groudon Z is probably going to be the most popular item on Groudon, but if you've got the Z move elsewhere and you don't feel comfortable with it on Groudon, players will tend to go to other options like Life Orb, the 50% berry, and then the Choice Band as well, which does boost Groudon's ability. You're going to see the common attacks that we've seen and we've mentioned already, which are Precipice Blades, the Groudon Z, Fire Punch, Thunder Punch. You're going to have Rock Slide, Stone Edge, and then Stomp and Tantrum, as well as things like Sword Stance as well that can help boost Groudon up and make it very threatening very quickly, especially when players are adjusting their board positions to better suit themselves against the Groudon. Common partners you're always going to see with Groudon are always going to be things like Venusaur for the Chlorophyll ability, its ability to attack those water type attackers that threaten Groudon so heavily. You're going to see Tapu Fini, it's a good switch into those water type attackers that do threaten Groudon. It has the Messy Train to protect it from status conditions, it has Swagger as well, and then things like Incineroar, which can also benefit from some of its fire typing, fake out support, intimidate support. The best checks that you're going to see for Groudon in the format, personally, I think are always going to be things like Kyogre, things like Venusaur, things like Cortana, Tapu Lele. Now it has access to its Z move, and also that Lunala as well with its access to its Z move and its Shadow Shield ability. Also being faster than Groudon does really help it out a lot, and I think the walls, the best walls in this format, and this will depend. It depends if Groudon that you're running has access to Rock Slide or not. If you haven't got access to those rock type attacks, things like Ho-Oh will just wall you all day long. Yveltal is the same, and Araquanid. They're all weak to rock type attacks, so it kind of puts a little bit of a theme in place here for when you're running Groudon yourself. Maybe you want to try and fit in a rock type attack like Rock Slide, and Stone Edge are nice options here for attacking those, so it doesn't leave you really vulnerable to these sort of Pokemon that can come in and cause you all sorts of problems. So that is the Groudon guide in here, and hopefully you've enjoyed it, guys. I'm just going to flick back over to our main screen here, and we'll end it up there. So if you've got any questions about anything that we've covered in today's guide, how to play Groudon in the Moon series, do leave them in the comment section below and let me know what your thoughts are in general of this guide. I've tried to cover each individual base of intermediate, advanced and beginner level of Pokemon trainers when you're trying to get into this format and learn how to play and just refresh yourself with how things are going. So hope you've enjoyed this guide. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you on our next episode for another VGC 2019 Moon series how to play guide. So until then, take care and bye bye.